Turning an idea into a real business isn't easy, especially when you're a student. This week on the Honor Roll podcast, we'll talk about turning dreams into reality at USF. All that and more coming up next. Hey Honors Bulls, welcome to the Honor Roll podcast, the flagship podcast of the Judy Genshaft Honors College Podcast Network. I'm your host, Fabiana Requena, a third-year student studying marketing and business analytics at the University of South Florida and a member of the Honors College. Today, my co-host is Caroline Merriman, a fourth-year student studying English and biology. Welcome back to the podcast, Caroline.
Thanks for having me back.
As always, we like to start off the podcast with one big question. So my question this week is, have you ever had your own business?
I think when I was like 7, maybe, I had like a little lemonade stand with my sister.
Oh.
But I don't think we sold any lemonade. I think it was, it was practice.
You had a failed business.
Yeah.
Sorry to hear that.
It only took a few minutes.
That's funny. I actually had like a jelly bean stand when I was little, which is really random.
What was did you have a lot of customers?
I think so. I don't know how much each jelly bean was going for, but like that's kind of a scam.
Were you just handing people handfuls of beans? Or
Yeah.
were they prepackaged? I don't understand.
Yeah, they were. But actually, I do have a business now. I have a marketing advertising agency. It's called Perla Creative.
Wow, you've transformed.
I know. I've come a long way.
Step up.
Well, this week we'll be talking all about the world of student entrepreneurship with Mira Stimac, founder of Lope Bars, and Frank Nunez, the program planner at the USF Nault Center for Entrepreneurship. We'll be right back.
Hi, my name is Sophia Mitsuyuki. I'm a sophomore in computer engineering. My favorite honors experience was joining the honors choir in my first semester. Being a STEM major and being able to do art, that's something that touches my heart. Go Bulls!
Mira and Frank, we'd like to welcome you to the podcast. And before we jump in, can you just start off by introducing yourselves, a little bit about what you do?
Yeah, I'm Mira. I'm a student at the Honors College and underneath the Entrepreneurship College as well at the Muma College of Business. And I have a company that makes savory energy bars called Lope.
So I'm Frank Nunez. I'm the program planner for the Nault Center for Entrepreneurship at the University of South Florida, Muma College of Business. Primarily my role there is planning and coordinating many of our pitch competitions and events for the center. My background is in banking, sales, and I'm also working on a digital publishing business where I'm working on a suite of books that I'm publishing, including a spy novel that's coming out probably the end of April.
That's super interesting. Thank you guys for, joining us today to have this podcast and to share your experiences with us. Mira, I think it's important for you to share a bit about how your company Lope began. Your company started with a modular training shoe. Can you walk us through that idea and how it led to an energy bar?
Yeah, so it started off because I had just quit the track team at USF and I was looking to almost be in that space, but within the business side of it. So I was looking at what kind of problems there were within the running atmosphere, and I found out that running shoes are very expensive and they need to do a lot at once, so people have to buy all these different pairs of running shoes. So I thought, why not combine it into one shoe that would decrease the cost and increase the sustainability so you wouldn't have to buy 3 pairs of shoes, which is kind of annoying. So I started and I went to this hustle intro program. I didn't really know what it was, but I came and I listened, and they were saying that they would fund your business idea if you went through these different pitch competitions. So I was like, oh, I'll sign up for this. So I signed up and pitched basically, and they liked the idea and the concept. So I was able to receive their help to create that idea. But through all of that work, we kind of realized there wasn't much of a market for modular training shoes. And so I was looking at what other problems these runners that I had talked to and interviewed had, and it seemed that they had a lot of problems with their nutrition before their running. They were looking for kind of a option that wasn't super sweet. So I thought, let's make a savory energy bar. They don't exist in the market, and it would be a perfect solution to all these runners' kind of issues before their training. So that's how it came to be. So yeah.
So, Frank, you work really closely with student entrepreneurs. How common is it for startups like Mira's to go through that similar shift? How often do you see that? And what is like the key to recognizing that it's time to make a shift?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think it's very common for a lot of student entrepreneurs and just entrepreneurs in general to pivot when they're looking to develop a business, because usually, you go from the ideation stage where you're kind of trying to tinker with this product or innovation, kind of figure it out. And then from there, you're trying to really you do the customer discovery, trying to determine if customers are even going to want this. And actually, with Mira originally, you were designing. I don't know if you mentioned this already, and now in the podcast, like a customizable shoe. So it was a massive pivot on Mira's part, which I think is a testament to her ability to be an entrepreneur. Because for a lot of entrepreneurs, that can be hard to do. We tend to fall in love with our product or idea. We don't want to change it, but if you want to succeed, it's just when launching a business, it's very common to be able to pivot and have multiple iterations of your idea until you have a functioning prototype, at least that you can work with and eventually get it to market. And I think what's great about her innovation that it's much easier, I think, to scale. I think she recognized that through hustle and being mentored. That the importance of being able to pivot and find an idea or a product that's easier to scale and get to market. So it's really common, I think, for a lot of entrepreneurs to pivot, especially in the early stages of developing their business. It's really common.
You mentioned the Hustle program at Muma. Can you talk a little bit more about that?
Absolutely. So this is, I believe, our third year iteration of doing this. So basically, Hustle, it's really less of a pitch competition, but more of a year-long incubator. And this was founded by, or part sponsored by a VC out of Sarasota, who is really passionate about helping student entrepreneurs develop their businesses. And basically, originally it started off where students were asked to manage and sell what's called these Just Bake kiosks, these food vending machines that had White Castle cheeseburgers, pot stickers, desserts, lava cakes, all that good stuff, right? So these students and teams were asked to manage and sell these units, and the teams that sold the most amount of units, I believe the first place winner was $75,000. But then after that, it basically it changed to where students were asked to design their own innovations and products. And basically, what's so great about Hustle is that they get to work with founders, seasoned entrepreneurs, investors that can help them develop their innovations. They can get seed funding to develop their innovation, as Mira received, and potentially Series A funding, which is usually funding accessible to early stage startups. So really, Hustle is just one of a number of different programs that the Nault Center offers to really help students develop their businesses. Because starting a business, and I'm sure many of you know this, Mira knows it's not easy to do. And it's a high failure rate. And the reason is because a lot of founders and entrepreneurs don't really know what not to do. And I think the benefit of our program is that we help students on what not to do when launching a business, and it helps increase the probability of success. But more importantly, we provide them resources, mentorship, and the support necessary to succeed. And Mira is just a really good example of that. So
I think those resources are really important to pay attention to, because as students, we're focused on so many other things. So when we do come into those obstacles, we can often see them as really big barriers. So that might, kind of make us like, oh, I don't really want to do this if I run into so many issues.
And kind of building off of that, Mira, could you talk a little bit about what it was like receiving the seed funding and what it really looked like to kind of get your company up off the ground?
Yeah, it was super exciting. Like, obviously, when we first got it, it was like, whoa, I'm so excited. What am I going to do? And then you get into it, and then you're realizing how much things actually cost. And it's like, this costs way more than I thought it would. It's going to take so much longer than I think it's going to take as well. Those are the two big things that I learned: costs more money and takes more time than I ever thought it would. But then, looking at it also as a huge opportunity and saying, what could I do with a limited budget, and looking at things like through more of a constrained view, like how can I make this work in the best way possible? And I love that process. I think seeing what I can do within the constraints, it's like a creative thinking process that I love doing. So I found a love of learning, I guess, in that. Does that make sense?
So being part of so many pitch competitions really allowed you to take part in being like in other ventures. You won the Thai Tampa Bay. You traveled to Google's headquarters and competed in Silicon Valley. What were those experiences like, and what did you learn? What was it like to be around other entrepreneurs?
Yeah, so traveling there was super amazing. First of all, like just seeing like the amount of community and support you have within Tampa Bay. Like I was having weekly meetings before even going down there for people to help and support me to craft my pitch and prepare for it. So, including the Nault Center, like they're just amazing in providing support. So, I think I felt an overwhelming feel of, wow, Tampa Bay has really got my back and they'll support me through anything. And then getting down there and talking to all those other entrepreneurs, it was really amazing seeing like what is the level of creativity and dedication that other young people have around the world. And it was amazing. I was like, I'm not even anything compared to these people. So in that way, I felt a little bit outside of my depth a little bit, but then also was inspiring to see what can I do. I wasn't limiting myself by my age after that.
Were most of the people like at the like conference like in your age range, or was it mostly like what was the stratification of that, like of who was present?
Yeah, it was all like college aged people. A few of them were like graduate students who had come back to do this. So they were like even above the level, but it was mostly college age students. Everybody was super welcoming and chill. Nobody was super intense. So that was nice.
And you touched on like the Nault Center like helping you like prepare that pitch. Frank, could you talk a bit more about like the opportunities that the Nault Center provides for students at USF?
That's a great question. So we offer, really originally, a lot of the portfolio of really events were geared around pitch competitions, right? And most entrepreneurship programs, offer those type of events, obviously because of Shark Tank, right? And really, I think pitch competitions are important because it gives students like Mira an opportunity to showcase their innovation, their brand, promote their brand. And pitching is a skill. If you can get really good at communicating, especially trying to influence, investors, other entrepreneurs, customers, right? If you're able to do that and pitch and get up there and put yourself out there, that makes you a very powerful person. But I think with our program, what we're trying to do is we're trying to pivot beyond just pitch competitions, because pitching really is a very small component of entrepreneurship, right? There's much more to it than that. And what we're trying to do is we're trying to provide more of a holistic approach to teaching students how to be an entrepreneur, providing mentorship, guidance, that's sort of that intimate one-on-one sort of coaching that I think is very beneficial. And that's really what we're trying to do is we're trying to cover all the bases when it comes to teaching entrepreneurship, which is not easy to do, right? Because being an entrepreneur, and I think Mira alluded to this, sometimes you get in situations that, you underestimate how much it's going to cost to develop a product, the expenses. Sometimes you don't, there's things that happen that are outside your control. And that's what we try to prepare students is we try to get real with them and show them, look, there's a lot of ways you can pivot, but there's also things you have to consider that are going to be outside your control. There's going to be challenges and how you're going to overcome them. So that's why, pitches are important, and we help train students for that, but we really try to go beyond that and try to provide that, cover all the bases with teaching students those skills that are necessary to succeed after they graduate.
I think USF and the Nault Center specifically do a really good job of, having those opportunities for students to be involved in competitions or really the Muma College of Business or like the Bellini Center. You can go out and partake in all these networking opportunities. Would you mind sharing why you think those are really important for students? And you can both speak on that.
Yeah. Well, I think I say this to a lot of students that you get what you put into your experience, not just at USF, but any university, right? Because you got these 4 years that you're in school will determine the next 10 or 15 years of your life, right? So you want to make the most out of your experience here and use all the resources available to you to succeed, whether it's doing our events, taking part of Hustle, using the Bellini Center, getting a mentor or a coach that we offer, networking with other students. Like you want to do everything you can and make the most out of the opportunities that are here. Because, once you graduate, our economy is changing rapidly, and we're seeing that already just in the past couple of weeks. We've been seeing immense changes and disruptions. And again, not getting political, some of them are good, some of them are not good, right? Again, there's things outside your control, and you want to set yourself up for success while you're here at the university level, and when you do that and you build, and this is the most important thing, it's building relationships, right? With the people that are doing the things that you want to do. Because, I always tell a lot of students, like, I know, when they're looking for jobs, don't obsess so much about the job. Try to find the person that you would want to work with or mentor. And I meet a lot of very successful entrepreneurs that have sold their companies for, hundreds of millions of dollars, extremely successful. And the common thing that I've seen with a lot of these folks is that they had a mentor, right? So having a mentor, going above and beyond what's necessary at the university level, if you can do that, it's going to increase your chances of success when you graduate. Because, if you do the bare minimum, once you graduate, it becomes that much harder for you. So I always say, make the most out of your experience at USF.
That kind of brings me to my next question, Mira, is did you have any mentors along the way that really helped you through the process?
Yeah, I did have a few. Of course, the Nault Center, we've got Frank here. We had Tim Ernest as well, was super helpful and always super, helpful and welcoming to me and friendly, I would say. And that's the big thing about the Nault Center, is that they're not people necessarily like looking down at you. They just want to uplift you. So versus like in the academic setting, it's very like professor, teaching you this, but they at the Nault Center want to work with you. So that's why they make such good mentors, is because they're willing to listen and integrate themselves into your business almost in a way. So they were really great mentors. And then, of course, the Chesler board as well. David Chesler and Rob Melberth were just fantastic in providing real world experience in those monthly meetings we had. That was invaluable to being able to pivot, being able to decide what lanes to go down, how to build the business. That was super helpful. So those would be my biggest mentors, I would say.
Yeah, I think a lot of students get stuck because they don't know how to ask for help. I think we get so used to being in the academic space that we get nervous to try and go out and seek mentors. So it's really cool that you had the Nault Center and the Chesler board to really step in and help you out and help shape you as an entrepreneur. Kind of sidestepping the conversation, have you felt that you've found similar support or ways to kind of expand your knowledge at the honors college that have kind of been able to be directed back into your experience with your business?
Yeah, so all of the classes I've taken were kind of directing me almost in a way to this path, because I was originally a mechanical engineering student, and I went through a couple different honors college classes, and one of them, when I studied abroad with the honors college in London, there was a walk through London, I think was the class name, and they kind of expanded my thinking to, why am I doing what I'm doing, and how is it setting me up for the future? Is that truly what I want to do? What kind of effect do I want to have on the world? So just being able to think through things a little more clearly beyond the scope of just financial success or what your parents want you to do. So those classes have been really essential in forming my passion and my purpose. So, and all of those classes I feel build on top of each other. I'm sure you guys have kind of had the same experience.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that our number one word here at the Honors College is interdisciplinary.
Yeah.
I think we say it on every podcast, but it's really true because we have the opportunity here to take courses that are really outside of our main focus of study, right? So I think it's opportunities like this that really, open our eyes to new things. And like you're saying, you studied abroad and you got to experience something completely different and opened your eyes to something else. Frank, how do you think experiences like this help student entrepreneurs?
A lot of our entrepreneurs that come through our program, they have various degree disciplines, from engineering to English majors to biomedical. They come from different disciplines and different backgrounds. So I think being with a successful entrepreneur, I think it requires trying different things, right? You don't want to get so bogged down into being super focused on just one thing. You want to explore different opportunities and ideas. There's something called it's a concept called combinatory play, right? Where you're kind of playing with different ideas and concepts in your external environment, and you're using that to create something new. And you look at a lot of the products and services that are out there, they're just iterations of previous products and services, if that makes sense, right? So you're just taking what exists and you're making it better. But to do that, I think it does mean like, yeah, trying to explore different things, right? And you may discover, like in that whole process, it could mean that, like, and again, we have these conversations with students. Maybe being an entrepreneur is the right road for you, but maybe it isn't. You could be an intrapreneur where you're working in a corporate environment, but you still have that entrepreneurial spirit where you're solving problems and you're going above and beyond what you're asked to do. That can create more opportunities for yourself and create value for those you're working for and your customers. So I think trying different things and just exploring life in general, you'll be surprised at what you come up with. And I think a really good example, I believe, is Steve Jobs, right? I think after um, when he was younger, I think he went to India for, I think, a pilgrimage for several months or longer. And in that process, I think he rediscovered himself. And of course, after that, the rest is history. So sometimes you have to go out and explore and try different things until, you eventually find your calling, I think. And that's a lot of trial and error, I think.
Yeah, I think that's a really great point to make for students, especially students who are interested in any kind of career that involves like a creative thinking, whether that's an entrepreneur or you want to be an artist or a researcher, that there is no other way out but through. Like, you do have to take the time to try all these new things, or your scope of view isn't going to be creative enough, right? You're not going to see things from a different perspective if you're not challenging your own perception of the world. And I think from a student perspective, like, that can be a lot to balance, especially when you're looking into like a business where it's like we have to creatively problem solve. We have to, find something new to create. How do you balance that, alongside, work or your school studies?
Yeah, what is great about changing my major to entrepreneurship is a lot of it crosses over, so I can directly see the connections between my business and what I'm working on at home to do that, and between my classes. So it's directly helping me. So I feel like I'm always kind of on the same. I'm like, oh yeah, I can incorporate that immediately. Like it's stuff like that that I think the major has really helped me. Obviously, it's very similar. That's why it's helping me. But through the honors college classes, which have been a little bit more interdisciplinary, it is hard to shift from that business focus to more of a meditative kind of practice, as a lot of the classes I take through the honors college tend to be a more reflection kind of thing. But it helps me look in like, what am I doing? What am I doing right? Taking a moment to pause and reflect on that has been super helpful. I think that's one of the big things that have been great about the honors college classes, is that moment of reflection. So I wouldn't say it's like a bad thing. It just takes a little bit of effort. It was like a good thing, but hard.
I want us to talk a little bit about like the time dedication it takes to running a business. Can you talk a little bit about how you juggle running a business and staying on top of school and, of course, all your other extracurriculars?
I would say I spend like probably like 5 hours a day, which is extreme, but I find it to be like, if I don't get it done, then I'm even more stressed out. So I have like a very dedicated Google Calendar and planner that I rely on heavily for that. I think from my experience being on the track team and the cross country team has taught me some really good time management skills, and knowing that I just have to like dig in and do what I need to do and then can move on, not being thinking about the next thing or thinking about the past thing, but being present. So I think running and being in athletics, any sort of sport, can teach people really good time management, and I've experienced that. So
Hi, my name is Caitlin Pachorik. I am a third year at USF, and I'm pursuing concurrent degrees in environmental science and policy and professional and technical communication. To me, being an honor student means being open-minded and being very interdisciplinary. I feel like it's super important to be open-minded to different perspectives, people who have had different experiences as you and know different things than you do, and being open to transforming your own knowledge and listening to other people's perspectives. It's also really important to be involved and passionate about making changes in your community through your experiences. Go Bulls!
So we've talked a lot about like the work and dedication of this process that you both kind of have led to with, entrepreneurship in general. Could you guys talk a little bit more about just like what joy you find in entrepreneurship, and what is it that really keeps you going, I guess, with something that, it does take a lot of time and dedication?
Yeah, one thing about the way that I look at entrepreneurship is I always look at it through putting people and the planet above profit, which is controversial for some entrepreneurs who think it might be the opposite and you need profit to do that. But I need a purpose almost. There's different type of entrepreneurs that don't need purpose, but instead look at it through a purely financial scope, which is great as well. But I kind of need a purpose in order to drive me to do those hours of work that I'm doing. So I'm thinking about who are these athletes that I can help? How can I make this business more sustainable? And how can I make profit in a way that could help others? So I'm always looking at it through a purpose motivated thing. So in that way, I do feel like it's making a difference in the world, and that's what motivates me to do it.
What I love about entrepreneurship is the creative aspect of it. That's what I love. And I guess being as a because I've been in banking and sales and it was fun doing that in real estate. Um, but to me, like for me personally, in my digital publishing business that I'm working on as a writer, I love being able to create new worlds and create something. And I think, to add to Mira's point, I think to create something out of like nothing, really, right? And to create value and to create something that I think can make an impact, which I think is the most fun aspect of entrepreneurship. Of course, there's a financial aspect which is important. I've met entrepreneurs like, yeah, I just want to make money. Like they're really blunt about it, which is fine. That's fine. There's nothing wrong with that. But you got to be careful not to get lost in the weeds with that, because if you focus so much on money at all costs, you actually lose sight of what's the most important thing, and that's you're creating something of value, and you want to embrace the process because being an entrepreneur is not easy. It may take years before you may see any sort of success in your business. I mean, every business is different, but you want to embrace the process and really embrace creativity, and really you're embracing the unknown, right? Because you don't know what's going to happen, whether or not you're going to succeed. But if you just enjoy it for what it is and just do the work, right, that's necessary, then it's not going to be as painful, I guess, sometimes. Because I think a lot of founders, they launch a business without even being sure if they want to do it or not. They're just so fixated on trying to make money or trying to do it. It's okay to walk away and step back and then pivot to something else, as we were talking before. But like creativity, I think to me, that's the best part about entrepreneurship, just creating something out of nothing.
Mira, I liked how you mentioned that you really wanted to find that purpose. And especially, we can talk about that behind Lope. I want to take a moment and kind of step back and talk about like your process, kind of how you started. You can talk about a little bit about like how you started preparing maybe the savory bars and like what drew you to that versus like the traditional bars that we see, energy bars that we see in stores. So just a little bit about your process.
Yeah, so when I started creating them, the idea was a mushroom like bar for some reason. And what really drew me to creating the business in the first place was changing the way we think about athletics and moving in with a less intense view of athletics, but a more calm, cool way to go about athletics. And so that's why I wanted to create a bar that made you feel calm and collected when you went into sport versus hyped up on all this like competitive edge, because for me that made me perform worse than if I felt more calm. And I also see it as a way to look at sports as a hobby rather than something you have to do, so something that's actually enjoyable rather than something that you have to do. So that made me create a bar that was included adaptogens like maca and ashwagandha that made you feel that sense of calm, also including any sort of clean ingredient. So we use brown rice puffs as our base, which is a very clean ingredient. It's not going to cause any sort of digestive issues. Again, leaning into we're feeling calm, cool, and we're going in. And then we don't use any sort of sugar besides honey and any sort of pre-workout as well. It's just purely honey is that energy source, so it's very calming, but it'll still give you that boost that you need. It went through a lot of variations because I realized you needed sugar to basically combine the bar together. You needed some sort of brown rice syrup or some sort of binder, and so honey itself doesn't work that well. So I had to create this new like marshmallow out of honey and gelatin to make it work, and that took like months to actually just use honey as the only sweetener. So that was actually a lot harder than I thought it would be, but I think it stands out from its competitors because of its simplicity and the way it makes you feel.
Yeah, it seems like you put a lot of research and like trial and error into like synthesizing this product, but I can see like with your explanation how it is like just so much more well put together. Would you have any advice for other students who are going through a similar process? Because I could see where that could get like really discouraging sometimes of, maybe, I don't know, learning to love the research.
Yeah, I think if you're going to go about creating any sort of product, it's okay to let go of certain elements that you think might be essential. Like, for example, I thought mushrooms were essential to this product. I don't know why I thought that, but it wasn't, and it didn't make it any better. So you might be really attached to a certain idea or part of it, but you have to look at the full picture and the end user. What do they need this product for and why? And what can make them do that? It doesn't need to be one specific. It's like making a bike and you're like, it needs to have lights. You don't need lights on the bike. So, you might be attached to it, but the end user really doesn't care about that. So keeping the end user in mind and being okay with letting go elements.
I can tell that you're really committed to being dynamic and not staying static in one place. Like, you're really always looking forward to the next step. What do you see for Lope bars like in the future in the next year or two?
Yeah, so right now we're focusing on marketing because that's something that I have really lacked on. I'm really into creating the product and designing things and securing funding or pitching, but I am not a marketer myself. So I'm learning how to do that with Chesler Holdings. We're going into sort of a marketing experiment. So we're going to see how much it costs to acquire a customer based on paid advertisement. So I've been doing a lot of learning from YouTube videos how to market. So I'm hopeful that we can increase our customer base in the next year or two. So we have the product now, and I just want to see it reach as many customers as possible. So that's hopefully next year or two.
Speaking of the customer base, who are you selling to right now? Who's your main client base?
Right now, we have mostly athletes buying our bar, mostly high-performance athletes. People in the Tampa Bay community have been super supportive as well. I think because they trust us because we're in the same area and I can see them face to face. So it's a lot of friends and family, if I'm being completely honest. It's a lot of, people who I know that buy it. And then we reach the occasional outside customer from our Instagram. But those tend to be people who go to the gym a lot or run a lot, and they like the savory twist on it. So the flavor change from sweet to savory. So they're interested in that, I guess.
Where can we find your bar if, the listeners are interested?
Yeah. You can find it at Lope Collective, so LopeCollective.com, or at our Instagram at Lope Bars.
And I love like the community aspect that you're bringing to like building your brand. I think that gives you a really strong foundation to start with, is like people who really know you and people who are kind of from the same place that you're from. Just to turn it back to you, Frank, is there advice that you would give to students who are maybe at any stage in entrepreneurship, whether that's, they're in the idea stage and they're looking to pursue something, or, whether they're trying to move forward into, the next stages of their plan for the future?
I would say follow your instincts, because there's a lot of advice out there. You go on YouTube and you go on, and not to obviously knock podcasts. There's a lot of podcasts, a lot of information, which is great, but there could be too much information, like information overload. So I think I would say for a lot of founders or entrepreneurs that are looking to launch a business, kind of follow your instincts a little bit. Listen to yourself. What do you really want to do? And not even just with the business, like what do you want to do with your life? What do you want? Where do you want to live? What kind of relationships do you want to have? How much money do you want to make? What kind of person do you want to become? Because that's the most important thing. Who are you going to be at the end of this journey? Just think about what it is that you want. And then I think once you do that, you're taking inventory of the kind of life that you want to live. And then you can shape your life on what kind of business you would like to start. And also I would say too, like there's a little exercise I show a lot of students, like to create, like get like a notebook and draw like 2 or 3 lines and create one category where you write down all your passions. Right? Everything that you love, everything that you enjoy. Then another category, make a list of things that you're good at. Notice there's a difference between the two, because we hear this saying, "Oh, follow your passions," or "No, do what you're good at." You want to try to think about what you're passionate about, but also what you're good at, and try to combine the two and see if you can create a business out of it. And you may discover that what you're passionate about, what you're good at, it doesn't necessarily mean that you have to start a business. It could be work in a specific company. It could be another role. It could be whatever that may be. But it's kind of, you're taking inventory of yourself, of what it is that you want, what are you good at, what are you passionate about, and what is it that you ultimately want to do in your life. And for some people, it could be entrepreneurship, right? Um, or it could be something else. It could be working in a corporate environment. It could be whatever. It's just trying to take inventory of all these different things. And because sometimes we just kind of get going without thinking about, okay, is this something that I really want to do? Because sometimes we feel like, oh, well, the only way I'm going to succeed is being an entrepreneur. Well, no, that's one way to have a career, but there's a lot of ways that you can go. There's more than one way to do something. So that's probably my suggestion. I think kind of think about what you're passionate about, what you're good at. How can you take those two things and create a business or skill or career out of it?
I think that introspective component of looking back, like you said, taking a moment, stepping back and seeing, like what you said, what you're good at and what you're passionate about is super important, because not enough people do that. And they can oftentimes feel stuck and frustrated, like, why am I doing this thing and why am I not happy? I feel like I'm maybe not good at it. So I really like that piece of advice. I just want to leave it off with, if you could both give one piece of advice to students dreaming of starting their own business, what would it be?
I think my piece of advice would be to take a lot of time thinking about it. Don't directly just jump into it. Like you was saying earlier, the introspection piece is really crucial here. Taking the time to understand if your customer actually wants it, talking to people in that field if you do have a business idea, not just dumping a whole bunch of money into it and calling it a day, but thinking about it and seeing if your customer actually wants it.
I would say think big. I know that sounds cliche, but really like dream big about what it is that you want. If your dream is to launch a publicly traded, successful finance company or whatever that may be, right? Whatever company you want to start, or you want to make this amount of money, you want to work with this type of customer, you want to, have this investor or this dream job, whatever that may be, really think big, because I think oftentimes, and I'm guilty of this, and a lot of people do this. And you talked about this, about how a lot of folks get like frustrated, they get discouraged because I think deep down they don't really believe that they can accomplish what they want to accomplish. You got to believe in yourself and believe like what you want is possible. Now, sometimes we have to reach a point where, okay, maybe we got to pivot, we got to, alter our goals a little bit, but you really want to just think big, right? Like, why not? Why not you? Why is it that you can't do this, launch this company, have this dream life, whatever that may be, and think big, and you'll be surprised at what you can accomplish. Because you're not gonna, you're not gonna know every step along the way, right? It's impossible. And I'm a big fan of Neville Goddard, right? So I believe start feeling as if what you want is actually here now in the present moment. Start thinking about that, and when you do that, it reshifts your focus on what it is that you want, and then you start taking the appropriate actions necessary to get to that final destination. Because and I've done lectures on this, there's this gap between like where we are to where we want to be. Like imagine like you're down here one side of like this screen, the bottom corner, and then on the other side of that corner of the screen is like your dreams and goals and aspirations. And then there's like this gap. And that's what creates a lot of frustration and fear and discouragement. We have no idea how to get to that shiny thing over there. So what I advocate is bridging the gap where you start feeling and thinking about as if what you want is possible and actually here now. And if you do that, then it gives you that confidence, and it again reshifts that focus towards where you want to go. So I got a little like philosophical, I think, maybe, right? Is that
No,
outside the scope?
like
But yeah,
this.
I think, yeah, it's, I would say kind of bridging the gap, kind of thinking about what you want like in the present. So
I think that's really great advice. Just breaking things down into small, manageable chunks every day
yeah.
can really help you achieve your goals.
Well, no, just thanks for inviting us, and I think you have a great podcast. And I want to congratulate Mira. I think she's done such an amazing job. And again, with starting a business is not easy, and just again that pivot, right? She had one idea for Lope, and then just I think a 180, right, in terms of just from the sneaker to now the energy bar, right? So I think that's a big testament to her, that flexibility to pivot and do what's necessary. Because again, like I mentioned before in the beginning, a lot of entrepreneurs fall in love with their products, but then they don't want to change. Like that's the hardest part of this thing. And Mira was able to do that. So I think that's a testament to her ability, and thanks for inviting us. This was a lot of fun.
There's a phrase we say a lot, and it's called "kill your darlings." And it's the
Yes.
same thing in like any creative process of like you'll get attached to like one sentence you've written and it literally is doing nothing, but you just like the words that you chose. And so you do have to just like be a little cruel with like your own work of being like, okay, well, I put all this effort into this, but it's like maybe it's for something else. Like maybe it just doesn't apply here and it goes somewhere else. This is like a side question. Do you think there's anything that makes like a bad entrepreneur? Like if you think about it, there's a concept of like, oh, who should be an entrepreneur? Like what qualities of a student are a good entrepreneur, but what would be a bad entrepreneur?
I've met a lot of bad entrepreneurs and business people. I mean, I've been in banking and really, I've met a lot of bad ones. I think a bad entrepreneur is someone who's unethical, someone who is dishonest, people like that. And, that's toxic. Those are the kind of folks that you want to avoid, because I've seen that in, working in various roles that I've worked in the past, where those kind of folks can create a lot of problems and they can just destroy a business and with catastrophic consequences. And we see that on a larger scale, right? You watch the news, you see this stuff all the time, right? So I think that's a bad entrepreneur, just someone who's very unethical, dishonest, and just, I think mistreats others as well. That's probably another thing too. They don't treat their people well. And I guess to close, right, all you familiar with the Great Resignation, right? There was like this phenomenon a couple years ago after COVID where millions of people left their jobs. Like, what happened? And I think the reason, because so many people got fed up, because I think in some ways there is this culture of toxicity, I think in some ways in corporate America, in some businesses and corporate environments, where I think a lot of people aren't treated very well. And they got tired of it. They wanted to change. So I think as you see, like, entrepreneurs that are unethical, or business people that are unethical, they don't do their job and treat people well, that has, that now just hurts the bottom line, but it hurts a lot of people as well. So I think, those are some, I think, what makes a bad entrepreneur, in my view.
I think I really agree with the fact that you said that a lot of people just had enough. They were fed up with it. And I think that actually gives way to more entrepreneurship. We're going to be seeing more people with like newer ideas that were tired of being like in the same circle of working in their toxic environment. So I'm really hopeful to see all those new ideas.
It's an exciting time to be an entrepreneur, I would say.
Yes.
Really exciting time.
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much, Mira, for sharing your story, and Frank for sharing your insights.
Absolutely.
Thank you so much for being on the podcast today.
Thank you.
Thank you for having us.
All right, we're back in the studio. So what did you think of the podcast today?
I absolutely loved it. As somebody who is an aspiring entrepreneur and, getting into the world of business, I think it's really inspiring to hear everything that they had to say, all of their insights and their advice. And I think it's really important for us students, even if we're not studying business, to look towards those opportunities, those networking events, and being part of, the Hustle program. If you have an idea, don't be afraid to pitch it. And there's so many resources that can help us students here at USF.
Yeah, and I really like that idea of like students just branching out, like regardless of your background. I think it's important to just have like diverse experiences, like while you're in college and you have the opportunity to do that.
So if you want to get involved at the USF Nault Center for Entrepreneurship or here at the Honors College, make sure to check out the Honor Roll newsletter and our website at usf.edu/honors for all upcoming events, updates, and news. That'll do it for this week's episode. The Honor Roll podcast is recorded in the Judy Genschaft Honors College at the University of South Florida Tampa campus. Production assistance is provided by honors student Sandra Napolitano. Thank you all so much for listening. Please do not forget to rate and review our podcast, as we really appreciate your feedback. Please join us next week to see what we're up to at the Judy Genschaft Honors College.
Until next time, go Bulls!